Cabin Sports Radio.
Here comes the siren. I want to go higher. Oh, my goodness. Batista with a drive. Deep left field. No doubt about it. Posey will defend. Oh! LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal.
Oh, baby, for sure.
Cabin Sports Radio starts now.
Oh, back after another break, including the Labor Day long weekend. Cabin Sports Radio back on the Cabin Radio airwaves. Lecter and Unbreakable Mike back with you to talk about, quite a few things that have happened in the past couple weeks in our absence. The NFL season kicked off. The NHL playoffs continue. And we're going to have a bit of a... what's the word? Are we going to cry, Mike?
A postmortem.
A postmortem.
We'll dissect it carefully.
That's the one. Yes, the Toronto Raptors playoffs came to an end this past Friday as well, as they dropped a Game 7 deciding game, lost to the Boston Celtics. We will talk about all that and more. Mike, I know Friday night was a tough one for you.
Yeah, it was a little rough.
I didn't want to text you because I figured you were probably already getting texts that you weren't responding to.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably seeing them come in. It was enraging you more. I didn't want to add to that rage. How are you feeling today?
I'm okay. It was rough. It was rough on Friday. I did have a couple people reach out. I tried to distract myself. I was, tuning in, tuning out. Great time of year. Lots of sports going on.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I was able to distract myself pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But it's still
in
stung.
healthy ways, right? Healthy ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all the articles now that have come out, they're kind of depressing.
Yeah.
But because let's celebrate the greatest era, and we're already talking like it's in the past
It's
tense,
all over.
Right?
That's it.
And that's because there are so many uncertainties, which we'll get to. But it's been pretty somber.
Yeah.
A period of reflection. The highest of highs, of course, just going back even a year ago.
Yep.
And now it feels like things are winding down. But there is some room for optimism. There's a really big pending UFA next year, and some believe that he's coming north of the border.
Okay, well, let's not waste any time. Let's get into it. Take a look at everything that's going on in the world of sports. Your CSR headlines. And a little bit more post-mortem.
We'll get it over with.
Let's hear it, Mike.
The Toronto Raptors' run in the NBA playoff bubble came to an end over the weekend. Toronto dropped Game 7 against the Boston Celtics 92-87 on Friday night, officially ending their 2019-2020 season and title defense. Boston advances to play the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Final, who beat reigning MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks in the other Eastern Conference semifinal. Toronto now heads into an uncertain offseason with key rotation players Fred VanVleet, Serge Ibaka, and Marc Gasol all set to hit the open market.
So you just referenced it. Is it a name that we should all get familiarized with? Because I have heard you say it 1,000 times, and I still am not quite confident if I can pronounce it. Take me through it syllable by syllable.
Giannis.
Antetokounmpo.
Antetokounmpo.
Was that right?
That was good.
Okay.
That sounded really good.
Okay.
If it makes you feel any better, I've heard. I guess we're professionals. You could say.
You could.
Sort of.
Yeah, you could allude to it.
But there are people getting paid a lot more money than us.
Yes.
On national broadcasts, international broadcasts, if you will. I'm thinking mostly of Charles Barkley, who have absolutely butchered so many names before us. I think of former Raptor Jonas Valanciunas. Jonas Valanciuing.
Valanciuing.
I've heard some good ones. Good ones over the years.
Oh.
No more are popping into the head right now, but they'll come.
Did he ever make the Sir Chewbacca joke?
Sir Chewbacca,
or did he
no.
leave that? Was that just a Lecter original?
That was a Lecter, but it was also an old friend of ours, Sandman. Yeah. Okay. Between the two of you, I remember. I think it was one of my first sportscasts back in the day. Did you just say Sir Chewbacca?
Sir Chewbacca.
The Toronto Raptors.
A knighted Wookiee?
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking here?
Power forward, Sir Chewbacca. and the Toronto Raptors.
Okay, so what are your thoughts? Do you think that is a real? So first of all, before we get to that, because that's off-season stuff, we got to do a postmortem.
Yeah.
Here. I watched the Game 7. I don't know if you was situated yourself in a bunker. Did you watch it with friends? Did you watch it sheltered, alone? Didn't want to see people? Didn't want to engage? What was the scene at the Gibbons household?
Well, actually, I recall I think it was Game 5 of last year's NBA Finals. We watched together.
Yes.
With the wheel out at a local bar. That was awesome.
Yeah.
They were
you could say the one. It was top night.
Yeah, they were so close to clinching it right there. I was over the absolute moon. The Warriors had a really good comeback. Force of Game 6. That's when the Raptors got it done. That is the last time, I think, that I have watched a playoff game of that significance. In a public place.
Okay.
Yeah. I did catch some.
Well, I mean, things have changed since then. It's not as easy to watch sports in public places.
I was going to ask if you watched Game 6, because that was a classic.
I caught the second overtime of Game 6, and that was crazy. That, actually, I mean, the last 2 minutes of that game, of that second overtime was
half an hour.
And almost the exact opposite of Game 7, in which I don't think there was a shot missed. In those last two, there might have been one in those last 2 minutes. It was just back and forth.
Right.
It was crazy. And then Game 7, the thing that really struck me about that game was that the Raptors did not play well at all. It seemed like they were really struggling to figure out anything offensively. Defensively, they were competing, but they were getting beat. They were not getting rebounds.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, Boston wasn't shooting well.
Yeah.
The Raptors didn't play a good game at all in really any facet of the game, but by the end, they still had a chance.
They're right there.
And that's got to be the most frustrating thing of all as a Raptors fan.
Well, 92-87, right? A very low-scoring game in the modern NBA. But you've got two very defensive-minded coaches in Nick Nurse and Brad Stevens of the Boston Celtics. And you wonder if it was an adjustment made on Nick Nurse's part. I think I talked about it before this series kicked off, that I was worried about the matchup just because of their depth at the wing and the guard positions. They have four really good players in Jason Tatum, who is now a budding superstar, 22 years old, has all the makings to be really special. Good size, I think at 6'8", obviously a very good shooter, but a tenacious defender, a playmaker, a clutch player. He's going to be really, really good. But then you've also got Jaylen Brown, almost just as talented, Marcus Smart, a defensive specialist, and Kemba Walker, who also has that clutch gene, has won it all on the biggest stage in college, but hasn't had the same success in the NBA. So now getting his first taste of real significant playoff experience, and he's blended in really well with the Celtics. But they went small, and they rolled out a line with those four and Daniel Tice. So the Raptors kind of had to adjust, and they had some really significant challenges with Marc Gasol, who did not have a good playoffs at all whatsoever. And even Serge Ibaka, his numbers, his minutes went down as the Raptors went to play a little bit more small ball. So that was probably an adjustment that Nick Nurse felt he had to make. And then, of course, I remember you bringing it up as well before the first round started against the Nets, a much inferior opponent just because they were decimated by injuries. But the concerns around Siakam and the play that he had so far in the bubble, and now really under the microscope, he had a really tough series. He just couldn't get it going.
And they needed him in Game
100%.
7. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you got the production from other guys. Fred VanVleet was solid throughout. Kyle Lowry was an absolute monster in Game 6. Always will be the engine of the Toronto Raptors for as long as he's in uniform there. Norm Powell was really good in Game 6. So everyone sort of had their moments. OG, of course, hit the epic buzzer beater in Game 3 that could have put them down 3-0 and effectively ended the series right there. But they battled all the way back to tie things up and force a Game 7. But you never really had a breakout game from Pascal Siakam, who had a really, really rough series. Under a lot of scrutiny right now. This was his first crack as the alpha dog, the number one offensive option for a Toronto Raptors team that was looking to repeat, obviously in the shadow of Kawhi Leonard last year. And he didn't perform. So there's lots of negative press out there right now. Everyone knows it. He's the first to admit it.
Yeah.
I think one thing Kyle Lowry said afterwards is after the Raptors were swept by the Wizards, that would have been about 5 years ago in the first round, he read every single negative article there was out there just because some people find motivation and fuel in that type of thing. So that's what he did after the offseason and came back way better, and the Raptors have been on an incredible run ever since, the best in their team's history. So it's going to be an offseason of reflection, I think, but a lot of work to improve his game because he didn't have a great postseason. No,
and so I imagine if Pascal Siakam is following that lead of Kyle Lowry, he's read quite a few articles in the last few days. Not a fun weekend for him. What is your thoughts on Pascal Siakam? Did that series and this playoff kind of tell the tale and give you an idea of where the Raptors need to be headed? Or is it a case of this is still a young guy who's still learning, he's still growing? I mean, you hear it said all the time about him. He's was this year also in the running for the most improved player award.
Yeah.
So you know that trajectory is still heading upward, but that was a really tough series, and especially in Game 7, it just seemed like the Boston Celtics they openly challenged Pascal Siakam. It seemed like they were very happy to just isolate that matchup of Siakam versus Tatum or whoever it was, and basically say, if this is your guy, show us. Yeah. He's going to have to beat us because we're not going to allow anyone else to really do their thing. He's got to beat us, and he couldn't get the job done.
I think some of it you can even chalk up to the yips, right? Like it was just bad luck, not finishing right at the cup.
Just dropping balls, like unforced turnovers.
Honestly, bad luck plays. Some of it you can chalk it up to. But I think the issue, he's a great penetrator. He's an improved shooter, but he's not someone at this stage in his career anyways who is going to create his own shot game in and game out, sequence in and sequence out. And that's something he's definitely going to have to work on. He's going to have to work on his handles. He is a good defender. He's a wiry, lanky, really versatile defender, and he's always going to give it to you on that end of the court. But definitely offensively, he can really polish his game, and I think he does that by becoming more of an off dribble shooter, creating his own shots, and also I think what's really going to elevate him is how much he can improve the play of his teammates. And how he can get them going.
What's got to be frustrating is even on the defensive side in Game 7, it seemed like he was struggling. He was taking some really unnecessary fouls. Getting just beaten hard to the net a few times, and he looked rattled. At certain points.
And I think that's just the frustration.
And the youth and inexperience.
Only 26 years old.
I actually didn't know he was that old.
Now, the difference this year compared to last year, though, is that he's going to be number one on the Toronto Raptors scouting report, other than probably someone like Kyle Lowry, who even the Celtics still couldn't really find an answer for. He was brilliant in stretches of that series. But every single game plan for an opposing team is going to involve you now because you're the alpha dog. They know that you're the number one offensive option, and teams are going to build a game plan around stopping you. And the Boston Celtics have very good defenders, really versatile defenders, 1 through 5, and that game plan was executed really, really well. So I think we just saw a lot of that frustration spill over, and if he's working so hard on the offensive end just to get buckets, because everyone's working so hard and focusing in on him, that's going to take a little bit off you on the other end too. So that's probably where we saw some of those unfortunate plays come in. And maybe some people can take reassurance in this that, for instance, even look at the career trajectory of someone like Kyle Lowry, who is now unquestionably the greatest Raptor of all time. And now a lot of people making a case this is a Hall of Famer right now, just because of what he's done in the past few years, solidifying his legacy with the organization. And the time he came over, He was the same age that Pascal is right now. So there's lots of time. And, by that point, he was a journeyman. He had played with the Grizzlies, the Rockets. He was labeled as a locker room cancer. He was someone who just never found a niche, never found a home, never found his calling, and came to a team that was really in disrepair and quickly turned it into a contender, a champion, a winning organization. So that's maybe some people can take some solace in that. It's obviously not too late. We're talking about a young player still with a really unique skill set, a really good work ethic, and that's why I don't think people should get too worried right now. He was overmatched by a really good Boston team that, for all we know, could be finals bound. And they were, again, took them to 7 games, the final possession of the game after forcing a Game 7 in the first place after going down 0-2 and then 3-2 and a miraculous a couple games going into overtime. So, there's still some really positive things to take away from this and his development, and I know he'll come back better.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think there's just some kind of universal truths at play here, and that is that no matter what the sport, Boston-Toronto is not a good matchup for Toronto.
In Game
7.
That's
just the way it goes. Unfortunate.
I was reminded of that again. It stung.
But nevertheless, let's stick with the Raptors a little bit because obviously now, like you alluded to earlier, the thoughts go to free agency, the offseason, what this team is going to look like next year. Like you mentioned, they have some pretty key players who are pending free agents, Fred VanVleet, Serge Ibaka, Marc Gasol. What do you think this team focuses on heading into the offseason? Well,
they definitely have... Going back to last year, they re-upped Siakam for the max, so he's in the fold for the next few years. Kyle Lowry, which is a nice surprise in the middle of last season, you may recall, they re-upped him for the end of next season, so he's still on the payroll.
That's huge.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so the number one priority has to be Fred VanVleet. He's going to potentially command a lot of money. He is a really, really good player. He's a tenacious defender. He shut down Steph Curry for stretches in last year's final. Can absolutely create his own shot. Has the clutch gene. Is a really good ball handler. And makes his teammates better. And he's a young guy too, an undrafted guy, someone with a chip on his shoulder. Just the exact type of person you would want in your organization. He's a winner now. He likes Toronto. So I'm hopeful that between him and management, they'll figure something out for a deal because he absolutely deserves to get paid, but has been linked to some other teams that are lacking in the point guard department. I've heard Detroit Pistons, but there will be other teams that will come calling for Fred VanVleet, who's emerged into quite a good player before our eyes. So I would think that would be priority number one, is locking up Fred VanVleet, and then maybe you pursue a 1-year deal. You've got Lowry for 1 more year. Keep the band together for probably Serge Ibaka. I wonder if the market for Marc Gasol, his value might have taken a little bit of a dip.
Yeah, he was non-existent in Game 7.
And he had obviously a great run in last year's playoffs. And then after that, went on to play in the FIBA World Cup and won a gold medal with Spain. Yeah. So he had a really, really busy summer. Winning basketball. It was a great summer for him.
Yeah.
But he came into this season laboring, lots of issues to start the year, just never could get into a rhythm. And then even during the course of the COVID hiatus, there were photos of him looking like he was in really good shape. He was. But by the time play resumed, just couldn't get a bucket to save his life. He didn't have a single 3 in the Boston series. I think he only had 3 in the previous one, and just looked completely out of sorts. Yeah. Normally a defensive anchor, but you want to get something on the other end too, and he just all postseason long could not get into a rhythm, and by the end was virtually unplayable. So might have hurt himself a little bit in terms of his value on the open market. So I don't think I expect to see him back in the fold.
Now, you already mentioned a blue chip potential free agent, Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Very good.
Nailed it. We were talking about this. I watched the game with the wheel.
Yes.
Actually here at the cabin. We just hooked her up and watched the game here. It was fun until the Raptors lost and ruined the night for everyone.
Yeah.
But we were talking a bit about this, and I wanted to get your opinion on it. And because I know you harbor a bit of resentment towards the American basketball media. And I've heard you mention on occasion that they just never give the Raptors their due. They just don't want to talk about Toronto. They just kind of, they're like outcasts because they're in Canada rather than in the United States. Do you think that the Toronto Raptors have now asserted themselves, and I have to think that having a good foundation with guys like Pascal Siakam and Kyle Lowry locked up for next year, do you think they have established themselves enough as a desired destination for a player of that stature who could go anywhere? Any team is going to make offers to him. Do you think Toronto is a big enough draw to bring him in?
Well, it's going to be 2010 and 2016 all over again when LeBron and KD were UFAs respectively. I think in 2010, every single team, all 30 teams, checked in on his availability, even if they knew there was no way in heck he was going to come to their team.
Say what's up.
They had no cash to make an offer in the first place, but it's LeBron James.
Even if he get laughed at, you gotta say, hey.
You have to say you did it. And same with Kevin Durant when he departed Oklahoma City and joined the Golden State Warriors in 2016. Everyone is going to come calling. I think a lot of the criticism towards the Raptors, at least in this postseason anyways, was that they couldn't get it done by committee. They didn't have a bona fide superstar. And it's a star-driven league. Everyone loves the LeBrons and the Kawhis and the Durants and the Anthony Davises, and the list goes on, the James Hardens. It sells. It sells better. So the notion that the Raptors couldn't get by committee, I guess in the end was valid. They didn't have a star stopper. They didn't have a budding superstar like a Jason Tatum, and Pascal Siakam looked out of sorts. But I think, yes, they've absolutely developed a level of credibility within the league. I think what makes the link to Giannis more credible, though, is the fact that he's European. So obviously the Raptors have deep international ties with Masai Ujiri and the basketball programs he has running in Africa. You've got the connection to Serge Ibaka through that program as well. Marc Gasol, who's from Spain.
Right.
Of course, Pascal Siakam from Cameroon. There's always sort of been an international flavor with the Toronto Raptors, even in previous iterations. Jose Calderon from Spain as well. Andrea Bargnani, like they've always.
I mean, I guess even Nick Nurse, coached in the UK.
Yeah, and now the head coach of Team Canada and their basketball program. So they've always had deep ties to other parts of the basketball world. Toronto obviously is a very multicultural city. They've got a very strong Greek population on the Danforth. But I think what actually has me reading into this more is the connection between Masai Ujiri and Giannis Antetokounmpo, who helped Giannis's family relocate. They had a connection from the basketball program in Africa, and he helped Giannis's family relocate to America, and they've remained very close since. If any GM is going to get it done, it's the best GM in the sport, and that's Masai Ujiri. And, again, just sort of the international flavor of the Toronto Raptors, the fact that they've attracted international players and stars before, why can't they do it again? So reports coming out right now within the bubble, the NBA playoff bubble, is that it's an open secret that Giannis has narrowed it down to two teams, and it's the Miami Heat, who he just got destroyed by, and the Toronto Raptors.
Wow.
And those are, and of course, Milwaukee, obviously, in the mix too.
Right. Yeah. But that's not a sexy destination.
No. And you played your whole career there, and you haven't won yet. But met with management this week, and ownership groups who said that they're willing to go into the luxury tax to put a contender on the court and get him a championship in Milwaukee. He's saying all the right things, but of course they always do.
Yeah.
That I want to plow through this. I don't want to run away from it. I want to push through.
Yeah.
But of course we live in the age of social media, and we now know that he has unfollowed all of his Bucks teammates and the team itself. What could it mean?
Can't look past that.
There you go.
All right. Well, I mean, obviously it's not a done deal. It's far from any sort of done deal. But, You may as well go big. You may as well put a Mike Gibbons guarantee on this.
No, I can't do
Not
that.
going to do it?
No.
Okay.
You know
All
what?
right.
I think the fit, I'd be over the moon, obviously,
Yeah.
if they were to secure that.
Well,
But
and you got pretty excited when you thought Kawhi was sticking around.
I know.
in Toronto,
The Kawhi
too. We don't
watch.
want to.
Oh man, that was an unproductive week at work. I apologize if my employer is listening, but yeah, that was a tough time for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
Also,
not revisit that.
I wonder too if maybe teams start to really aggressively pursue a trade. Some teams with tradable assets, one of them being the Golden State Warriors. They got the number 2 overall pick. They got Andrew Wiggins. A lot of people saying they might package that and something else and try to scoop Giannis away this season. And there might be other teams in the mix too. The fit in Miami makes sense too. It's a very desirable destination. They're a team that is absolutely on the up.
They go to Milwaukee before I went to Miami.
Yeah, you would go to Milwaukee. Oh boy,
It just seems safer. I don't know.
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe the ownership group is actually able to themselves pursue a trade.
Yeah.
To put someone beside him that works out. So, I do think he'll hit the open market, and I do think he'll leave Milwaukee. I would love it if he came to Toronto, and maybe that happens.
Okay.
But I think at this point in time, I would give the edge, the very slight edge, to the Miami Heat.
Okay.
But perhaps, like I said, if anyone could do it, it's Masai Ujiri.
All right.
Maybe he gets it done.
I like it. I like the optimism. You're staying humble. Learned from your past and your mistakes.
Yes.
I like it. All right. What's going on in the rest of the NBA?
Meanwhile, LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers have punched their ticket to the Western Conference Final with a 5-game series win over the Houston Rockets. The last time the Lakers appeared in the conference final was in 2010 when they went on to win their 16th championship. Los Angeles awaits the winner of the Clippers and Nuggets series in the conference final, a series that is going to a 7th and decisive game tomorrow.
Back-to-back 3-1 series deficits that the Denver Nuggets have clawed their way out of. This time against the aforementioned Kawhi Leonard and his LA Clippers. Well, that's honestly just crazy. And speaking of Canadian basketball, Jamal Murray, just continuing to tear it up for the Denver Nuggets. What do you think's coming out of those two series? Well, I guess that series, and then what do you think either of those teams does in a series against the LA Lakers?
I'm going to go off track for 1 second. Can you imagine if Kawhi stayed? It'd be a cakewalk.
Oh my God,
they'd be in the finals already.
Yeah, it's best not.
Are
to
you
think
kidding me?
about it.
And he stuck it out with the Los Angeles Clippers, who have proved to be a little shaky this postseason. Now, of course, the Raptors are out, but should the Clippers go out tomorrow night, they'll have gone exactly as far as the Toronto Raptors did. Kudos, obviously, to the Denver Nuggets, who went down 3-1 against the Utah Jazz in the first round. They were the 12th team in NBA history to erase a 3-1 deficit in the postseason, and they have a chance to be the 13th tomorrow night. It's pretty crazy on the heels, like you said, of really good play from Jamal Murray, but more so this series, I think just because they don't have an answer for him. Nikola Jokic has been playing out of his absolute mind, and they don't have an answer for him because they don't have a solid power forward or center option. No one on that lineup can match up with him, and he's basically doing whatever he wants. He's an extremely versatile big. I think he has solidified his position as the best big in basketball right now just because of the wide range of abilities he has. He's clearly the best passer at his position, a really, really high IQ player who can shoot the ball, space the floor, post up, rebound, you name it. He's the real deal. And Murray, who's had a fantastic first-round series against the Jazz. They've game plan for him a little bit more. Obviously, the Clippers have, I think, two players who made all defensive NBA teams in Patrick Beverley and Kawhi Leonard. Paul George is usually in that mix too. And so they've got some really good defenders who have been keying in on him and making life a little bit more difficult for him, but he's still getting his shots, and you can't rule out this team. I watched Game 6 last night, and it was another double-digit comeback. I think it was 19 points they were down. They go on a 55-30 run to end the game. They win by a dozen, which is exactly what they did in Game 5 as well. All bets are off, I think, just because the Clippers, who I think admittedly were probably my title favorites heading into this postseason, have looked really shaky at times, and they were completely phased by the late game run that the Nuggets went on in Game 6. They had absolutely no answer. They looked completely stunned. And I think it's just because they were getting badly beat by someone in a position that they don't have an answer for. And the other guys played really, really well too, and they couldn't hit their shots. So definitely some cause for concern in Los Angeles if you're a Clippers fan. That's two really big leads they've blown now, including a 3-1 series lead. And now we're going to a decisive Game 7 where really I think all bets are off.
You mentioned the 12th team in NBA history to come back from a 3-1 series deficit and win the series 4-3. How many teams in NBA history have done that in back-to-back series?
I don't think it's happened. They would be the only one. Wow. So the last 4 series for the Denver Nuggets have all gone to Game 7.
Wow.
And the last 2, of course, now after them coming back from a 3-1 series deficit. So a chance to do something really special tomorrow night. Now, here's the worst part. Whoever, obviously, if you lose that game, well, that's terrible. You're going home.
Yeah.
If you win that game, you get arrested LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and the Los Angeles Lakers the next night.
The 2 words that popped into my mind were moot point, question mark?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Game 7 tomorrow. Game 1 of the Western Conference Final Wednesday night against a rested and very motivated Los Angeles team. No drama. Both series, they dropped Game 1, and then they won 4 straight.
Yeah.
They're 8-2 in the postseason. They look very, very good, led by their 2 incredible players, the best duo in basketball, LeBron James and Anthony Davis. And if the Clippers, who are probably still the favorites to win tomorrow night because they have Kawhi, and the last time he was in a Game 7 was against Philadelphia last year when he scored 40 plus, and the shot heard around the world. So I would still consider them the favorites, but then they're going to play a Lakers team who, if you don't have an answer for Nikola Jokic, you will not have one for Anthony Davis, and he could just rip that front court to shreds. And then he got the best player in the world in LeBron James.
Not a fate I would wish on anyone.
They haven't put themselves in a nice position, but we'll see. Kawhi Game 7 tomorrow. So,
All right. Speaking of rests, we are going to take one here on Cabin Sports Radio. We will be back after this.
You're listening to Cabin Sports Radio, brought to you by Sport North, moving sport forward.
We took part in the Peterson and Auger 68th Annual Kids Sport Golf Tournament a couple weeks ago, which sounds bizarre to say now that it's mid-September, and we had frost on our windshields this morning here in Yellowknife. But yes, we did play some golf recently, raised some money for Kids Sport NWT, and very much looking forward to hearing from Sport North what the total raised was. Of course, all proceeds went to Sport in the North with Kids Sport NWT, and that is a fantastic event that we are very happy to support. And Sport North are the proud sponsors of Cabin Sports Radio. Transitioning to the NHL because my dad demanded we talk more hockey this week. A couple of awards announced in the NHL before we get to what's going on in the NHL playoffs. The Jack Adams Award, Coach of the Year. The winner, Bruce Cassidy, Boston Bruins. I thought it was a pretty boring pick. I mean, yeah.
What are the other options? Alain Vigneault?
Yeah, Alain Vigneault and
Torts.
And Torts.
Damn.
I mean, yeah, sure. The Bruins were great this year. They finished with a 44-14-12 record, which is crazy good. They had a plus 53 goal differential, which is crazy good. But look down that roster. You have a veteran, leader-laden roster, a team that, let's be honest, probably could have done this without even a coach behind the bench.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was kind of a underwhelming pick a little bit. I mean, congratulations to Bruce Cassidy.
Yep.
Yeah, you did a great job. That's fine. But come on, give it to Alain Vigneault.
President's Trophy winners. Come on.
President's Trophy winners. Yes. Well, the Philadelphia Flyers were not shut out of the awards this year because Alain Vigneault may have not won Coach of the Year, but Sean Couturier did win the Frank J. Selke Trophy, which is awarded to the best defensive player, beating out Ryan O'Reilly and Boston rival.
So you can say they got even. They evened the score. They took one, they got one.
And he beat out Patrice Bergeron, who is like, I mean, you could pretty much just by default give him the Selke Trophy every year, and no one would really question
Not at all.
on it. But Couturier had a fantastic season, 22 goals, 37 assists, and led the NHL in faceoff percentage, almost 60%.
Wow.
Faceoff wins. That's pretty incredible stuff. So congratulations to Sean Couturier. The Lady Byng Memorial Trophy, the most gentlemanly player, was the finalists were Nathan McKinnon, Austin Matthews, and Ryan O'Reilly. O'Reilly, once again, the bridesmaid, not the bride.
Poor guy.
The winner, Nathan McKinnon. I would have thought it kind of strange if Austin Matthews had won that, considering just ahead of this past season, you may remember there was an incident where he pulled his pants down in front of a security guard. Not very gentlemanlike.
I remember that.
But I suppose that was off the ice, not on the ice. So, that is what it is. Other awards that were that we did find winners for was the Jim Gregory General Manager of the Year Award. And I just thought I would mention this because it's got to be a little bit of a thorn to the Toronto Maple Leafs. The finalists, Julien Brisebois of the Tampa Bay Lightning, Lou Lamoriello of the New York Islanders, and Jim Nill of the Dallas Stars. The winner, Lou Lamoriello, the guy they booted out of Toronto because he was too old to build winning franchises anymore. Yeah, well, you're still learning from the old man, Kyle Dubas. Anyway, let's take a look at what else is happening in the NHL.
All right. The Tampa Bay Lightning and Dallas Stars are both within one win of a Stanley Cup final berth. Tampa leads the New York Islanders 3-1 thanks to a couple dominant offensive outings, while the Stars have pushed the Golden Knights to the brink out west using their defense. The Lightning last appeared in the Stanley Cup final in 2015 when they lost to the Chicago Blackhawks. The Stars haven't appeared in the Cup final since 2000 when they were beaten by the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah, the tale of a little bit two different clubs with that regard. 2015, still a pretty large amount of that core with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Obviously, the 2000 Dallas Stars, not so much.
No.
Joe Nieuwendyk, long gone. Mike Modano, long gone, etc., etc. I was actually thinking about this the other day. I completely forgot that the Tampa Bay Lightning were in that Cup final against Chicago. For some reason, I had it in my head that this, if they were to advance to the Cup finals this year, past the Islanders, that this would be their first appearance.
Right.
But yeah, no, they were there. Yeah, 2015.
So the Stars have only had 4 Stanley Cup final appearances with a 1 win in not that year. They lost to the Devils in 2000.
Yes.
They beat the Sabres in 99.
One of the most controversial Cup winning goals of all time.
Was that when was the Dominator playing then? Was that before his time? Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Dominic Hasek.
Just a kid then, but I remember the bucket helmet.
Oh yeah,
you had to go high to score on him. You couldn't score low. The guy was a machine.
Yeah.
But I too forgot 2015. That's pretty fresh. Their last Stanley Cup then must have been, was it 2006 or 4?
2004. Yeah, against the Calgary Flames.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was the Hurricanes. I think 2006 beat
the Edmonton Oilers.
That's right.
Yeah, the ill-fated Canadian franchises who still have not won a Stanley Cup since the Montreal Canadiens in 1993.
That's right.
Speaking of that, actually, did you see? Actually, this is another thing my dad wanted me to mention.
Okay.
Did you see Brian Burke, his roundup of the Canadian franchises and kind of his ranking of number 1 through 7?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
questionable at best.
You know what? I didn't really disagree with much of it per se. The only things I thought I kind of picked out that I was like, well, I don't know about that. He had the Calgary Flames and the Winnipeg Jets tied for 4th.
Yeah.
Because of alphabetical order. He had the Winnipeg Jets in 5th, Calgary Flames in 4th. But he mentioned that the Winnipeg Jets have a goaltending problem that they need to sort out.
Didn't they just have a Vezina finalist?
They have a Vezina finalist.
Or they still do. Sorry, they haven't announced that.
They do, yeah, in Connor Hellebuyck.
Okay.
And Laurent Brossoit, he did not have a great year this past year as backup goalie, but the year before that, absolutely stellar numbers as Hellebuyck's backup. I don't know. I don't really think they have any problem in goal. The glaring problem is their blue line and the massive gaps that they need to fill continuing into this season. But the Toronto Maple Leafs, number 1.
Well, that's, I think, probably the only point of contention for me. Obviously, it makes sense having Ottawa at the bottom, Montreal right down there too. maybe even Edmonton and Toronto are on par for me, but just given the postseason run they had, and I think the direction of their organization, I would have put Vancouver in that number one spot, and maybe 2 and 3 are interchangeable for me. A lot of the same issues sort of plaguing the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Edmonton Oilers. They've got all the star power in the world, but both teams now might have an issue at the goalie position. Who knows what the Leafs are going to do with Anderson? And obviously the blue line for both squads needs to be solidified. So I definitely would have had Vancouver as my number one, but other than that, I think pretty close.
Yeah, and my only thoughts about the Toronto Maple Leafs there was that, I mean, if the Maple Leafs are the team that Brian Burke thinks, are the Canadian club that Brian Burke thinks has the best chance of winning a Stanley Cup in the near future, what an indictment that is on the rest of the Canadian clubs. Because, I mean, they're a good team. Yeah. They're going to be competitive next year. They're going to be competitive the year after that. They have the kind of talent that even if they don't address their defensive issues, they're still going to be able to get through a season by scoring their troubles away. Yeah. But that simply doesn't work in the playoffs.
No.
We've seen it time and time again because you're going to run into a team like the Boston Bruins, and they are going to shut you down when it comes to playoff hockey.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't disagree that, they are potentially one move for a blue chip defenseman. There's been a lot of talk about Alex Pietrangelo. Where might he go? He would be a very nice and very welcome addition to the Toronto Maple Leafs blue line. But how do you afford that? You got, your core that they seem that they are sticking with through hell or high water.
Yeah.
John Tavares, William Nylander, Mitch Marner, and Austin Matthews. It seems from everything that Kyle Dubas and anyone around the club seems to say, there is no plans to move any of those players.
No.
And there's not a whole lot of defense in that core.
No, which leaves someone like, Willie Nylander potentially on the outs, and some of the other core guys as well. We've already seen Kapanen dealt to the Penguins. I think we're going to see a lot more moves this offseason. I had two thoughts, neither of which are related to the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Dallas Stars, but I'll get there. First is a question. How many of those teams has Burke been involved with?
Oh, he made a joke about that.
Yeah. He's been fired by multiple... the Leafs, of course.
Yep, Vancouver
and
the Calgary
Flames.
Yeah, I
thought so.
I don't know if he actually got fired by Calgary. I think he might have just kind of moved on, but maybe he did get fired.
Maybe
I don't know.
Mutually parted ways.
That's right. Yeah, it could be.
And then my second thought, I'm sure you heard it too, is more of a sobering sort of admission from, I believe it was David Krejci, just talking about Jack Adams Trophy winner. Bruce Cassidy earlier about the core of the Boston Bruins and how they're aging, and it was Krejci and Marchand who figured they've got 1 to 3 years left of contention, really, which is sad because they've been a perennial contender 4 years now. But
I mean, it's objectively sad.
It's objectively sad. Yeah. As a Leafs fan, it's okay. But I guess getting back to the Lightning and the Stars, I think I figured that the Lightning would be in this position. The scary thing to me is they're doing all of this without their captain, Steven Stamkos, who has been ruled out of this series. It looks like they won't need him anyways against a pretty stingy New York team, but they've had some onslaughts. An 8-2 win, was that game 1 or 2? And then even 4-1 the other night. They've figured out the Islanders. They're in a whole world of trouble right now. I would be shocked. I would say at this point they are my pretty heavy Stanley Cup favorites.
Yeah, I find it very, very hard to disagree with you, even just for argument's sake. But, just thinking about it now, that reminds me about that 2015 series when the Tampa Bay Lightning lost in the finals to the Chicago Blackhawks. One thing I remember learning about that series was we saw the emergence, over the course of those playoffs, really, we saw the emergence of Tyler Johnson and Andre Palat.
Yeah.
And a few more players who have really become. Obviously Victor Hedman was 5 years younger. Now he's arguably the best defenseman in the NHL.
He's smooth. Holy,
oh man, wow. Does he ever look good? That pass to Kucherov on that winning goal. What was that, game 2? I think. Yeah. Oh my God.
He's on another level.
Speaking of young players at the time who they've added to their core, Nikita Kucherov.
Yeah.
arguably the best offensive forward in the league right now.
Yeah.
And I remember at that time thinking, does this team even need Steven Stamkos?
Right.
Like you've got this budding youth group who just, they can get it done.
Yeah.
Obviously it's nice to have a guy who can add you 40, 50 goals any given season, but it just seemed like, maybe they didn't really need Steven Stamkos and obviously the added salary that he would bring. And I remember at the time thinking there was a lot of thought that and a lot of hype that maybe he was headed to Toronto.
Yeah, that's right.
And then he just quietly re-signed with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that was very quickly
no state
forgotten
tax.
about. And here we are again, the Tampa Bay Lightning getting it done. No Steven Stamkos to mention, and you got to wonder what is the plan there in the future. But nevertheless, that is something that's a future problem for the Tampa Bay Lightning. They obviously miss Steven Stamkos, but they are not showing it against the New York Islanders, up 3-1. The Dallas Stars.
Yeah.
Where did they come from?
You didn't have that in your bracket?
No.
They have just been pooping on
Did
everyone's
anyone?
brackets. No. I definitely had the Vegas Golden Knights winning this series. I don't even think, and I was drinking the Calgary Flames Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
I have a lot of Calgary Flames fans here, and they had me convinced that even that was a bad matchup for the Dallas Stars.
Yeah.
Who really struggled to score in the seeding rounds, and then have got things together and have been rolling ever since, and then knocking off one of my cup favorites, the Colorado Avalanche, in 7 games. They're just resilient. They're pesky. They're grindy. Really defensively sound hockey team. They've got a nice. Well, I guess their GM was in the running for the GM of the year. So clearly, people saw them doing things right, even at the onset of the playoffs, and made a couple quiet, not quiet additions in the offseason, getting Pavelski, who's had his moments. He's been very good in these playoffs. Corey Perry, who somehow just ends up in the middle of absolutely everything. Jamie Benn has been on another level. And then Kivarenka, Sagan. They've got guys. They've got
Sagan's
Radulov.
been pretty quiet, surprisingly.
But guys who can be difference makers. And then Khudobin has held his own. He's fared pretty well in the crease. So I certainly did not have them going this far, but they look as legit as ever. And giving another Stanley Cup favorite a whole world of headaches in the Golden Knights, who have just had no answers. And giving up significant leads, a lot of late lead changes. They just find a way, the Dallas Stars, to get late goals and give themselves a good opportunity to win, and now they've pushed them to the brink.
And every time I see Uncle Alex Radulov play, I just look at my friends who cheer for the Montreal Canadiens, and I'm like, how are you not angrier at this guy for bailing on you? Like, man, would he have been such a great addition to the Habs? He's the exact kind of player that they need and still need and have needed ever since he left. But never mind that. We shall see how that series plays out. Maybe big comebacks from both teams, setting up Game 7s. That's what it's going to have to be now. But I think it's going to be a Dallas-Tampa Bay final.
It looks like it.
That sounds like a pretty safe bet.
Yes. Be very shocked if anything else happened otherwise. And like I said, I like Tampa's chances. And let's see if they get their captain back for the final push. Speaking of Tampa Bay, I love that segue. Tom Brady and the new-look Buccaneers got off to a less than ideal start when they dropped their first contest of the new NFL season, 34-23 to the New Orleans Saints yesterday. Brady threw for 239 yards and 2 touchdowns, but also threw 2 picks in the loss. His former team, meanwhile, the New England Patriots, got off to a better start, beating the Dolphins 21-11 in Cam Newton's debut with Brady's former club.
I thought it was really interesting seeing the result. I mean, obviously, this is probably got to have been the most pressure Tom Brady felt in a regular season game 1 in his probably in 19 years.
Yeah.
Obviously coming into a new system, learning a new playbook, new offense, new players surrounding you, new head coach. It was all new. And that's really strange coming in as a 40-year-old or 41, whatever he is now. That's you don't often have that, a 41-year-old coming into an entirely new situation. And I saw some of the result. Obviously, a disappointing result for Tom Brady. Like you said, 2 touchdown passes, but 2 picks, 1 a pick six.
Yep.
They lost the game, and but the response from head coach Bruce Arians was very outspoken and very critical of Tom Brady's performance. Said a couple quotes for you. Quote: When you're throwing an out route, you don't throw it low and inside, which, I mean, I'm sure Tom Brady's like, yeah, I obviously didn't mean to put it there. Nevertheless, he went on to say he looked like Tom Brady in practice all the time, so it's kind of unusual to see that in a ball game because they didn't do things that we didn't get ready for. Basically, we were prepared for this team. Not sure why we looked so surprised by everything. Everything they did, we thought we were ready for. Basically, the Saints are who we thought they were. And we let them off the hook. Some more quotes for you. He has had it before. I mean, he knows how to bounce back. He knew he didn't play very well. It's not what he expects from himself, nor what we expect. I would expect him to have a little more grit and a little more determination this week. And I was just thinking back at wondering how many times did you ever hear Bill Belichick criticize Tom Brady? He's regarded now as the greatest quarterback of all time, and for good reason. He's got the stats and everything to back it up. But it's not like he played perfect every game.
No.
But you never really heard Bill Belichick, sit there before the press and say Tom Brady sucked, or anything like that, or we expect better of him. I mean, and he's, traditionally he was a pretty no-nonsense guy, so you would have thought maybe that would come once in a while, but I was really taken aback by that. I was like, I think Tom Brady is the kind of competitor that probably is not going to wilt from this sort of thing. No. He is going to respond. He's done it many times before, and I came across one story though about Tom Brady. I don't know when it would have been in his career. I think a little bit, probably like 10, 12 years ago. And it was Martellus Bennett, who was tight end for the New England Patriots at the time. And he told a story about the Patriots in practice were just getting destroyed by their defensive team. They could not complete a pass. And Bill Belichick basically just absolutely gave it to Tom Brady in the locker room. And Brady apparently was just pissed off after that and was working out extra time. And then the next day on game day, he went, I think he had 1 incompletion or something like that. Absolutely shredded the team the next week. So, I mean, and we've seen that kind of thing from Tom Brady before. He's an absolute competitor. He's going to bounce back from that. But you can't help but look at that $25 million quarterback losing game 1. Yeah. Meanwhile, former MVP Cam Newton on a $1 million bargain salary wins game 1 for the New England Patriots.
Is it the system or is it the player? That's a good win for Newton. Obviously,
a good win.
We're talking about the GOAT here, so no one is questioning the caliber of player that Tom Brady is. That takes some pretty serious jewels, though. If you're the head coach, not the new head coach, but the new head coach for Tom Brady, to publicly call him out after a rough game 1, that's pretty serious. But yeah, like you said, fully expect him to respond and probably in a really big way for game 2. And I remember his time with the Patriots. Everyone's looking for a headline, and when the Patriots dropped 2 of 4 or something like that and didn't get off to a shaky start, they would almost always reel off 8-10 straight wins to end the season. They've got the number 1 record at 12-4 heading into the playoffs. Suddenly they're in the AFC Championship game. They win and they go on to the Super Bowl, and all is forgotten. Obviously in a very different environment right now. He's got Gronk with him, but it's going to be a learning curve, learning a whole new offense with a whole new group of guys.
Absolutely.
It's going to take a little bit of time.
But probably not too much.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And if anyone's going to be fired up by comments made by their coach, it'll be him. and look out for him to have a pretty big game too.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to finish off. That'll do it for another week of Cabin Sports Radio, brought to you by Sport North, moving sport forward. Just have to end off, speaking of the NFL, with a shameless plug for the CFL, a quarterback who is forever etched in the hearts of Winnipeg Blue Bomber fans, affectionately known as Strevler the Leveler, Chris Strevler, who made the Arizona Cardinals roster, had some nice things to say about his time north of the border. Talk to you next week on Cabin Sports Radio.
Your time in the CFL, how did that help you, that opportunity help you to get to where you are now? When you look back at that, what was it that you took away from that helped you prepare for this situation as fast as it came?
I really can't say enough about my time in the CFL. I mean, it's obvious that without that time, I wouldn't be here, right? I mean, coming out of college, I didn't have any really NFL looks, went right up there. So obviously that time there gave me this opportunity down here. But, I mean, just the stuff that you wouldn't really think or wouldn't really see is that, you know, being up there, it taught me how to be a professional. It taught me how to, you know, prepare day in and day out for a long season playing against high-level players. You know, it taught me how to take care of my body like a professional. It's given me so many tools where had I not been up there for 2 years, I wouldn't have the opportunities down here that I have right now. And that's something that's never lost on me and something that I'm definitely appreciative of, and stuff that, you know, even today, coming in and doing things, that's stuff that I incorporated in my time up there. So, you know, it's all stuff that plays out every single day down here, and, you know, without that, wouldn't be where I am.